The day started like any other, with the faint sound of birds calling through the half-open window and the soft glow of the morning sun slipping through the curtains. I remember lying there for a while, watching the light dance on the walls, listening to his steady breathing beside me. To the world, we looked like a perfect couple. 10 years of marriage, a comfortable home, shared laughter, and memories stitched together like a quilt we both wrapped ourselves in. And in many ways, we were perfect, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. He stirred, turning slightly, and gave me the kind of smile that once melted my heart without effort. I smiled back, but even then, something about it felt different. Not wrong, not alarming, just not the same as it used to be. Maybe it was the way his eyes didn't linger, or maybe it was the weight of unspoken words between us. I brushed it off at the time, telling myself that people change, that marriages mature, and that comfort takes the place of passion. That was the way things were supposed to be, wasn't it? Breakfast was quiet, as it usually was. He scrolled through his phone, half listening as I talked about my plans for the day. He nodded in the right places, offered a distracted, here and there, but his mind was elsewhere. I told myself it was work. He had been stressed lately, projects piling up, deadlines looming. I wanted to believe that was all it was. And maybe, in that moment, I really did believe it. Later, while washing the dishes, I caught myself staring out the window, wondering when exactly the silence between us had become so loud. In the early days, we never stopped talking. We'd spend hours sharing stories, laughing about nothing, staying up late like teenagers in love. Now, entire evenings passed with barely a word exchanged, both of us buried in our own little worlds. I told myself it was normal. Life gets busy, people grow comfortable, love changes. But deep inside, a small part of me longed for the way he used to look at me. The way his gaze carried a fire, a hunger, a tenderness all at once. The way it made me feel like the most important person in the world. That look had been fading, slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day I realized it was nearly gone. That evening, as he returned home later than usual, I noticed something strange in his eyes. Not guilt, not fear, something I couldn't quite name. It was as if he had already left me in some secret way, though his body was still here, walking through the door, setting down his keys, loosening his tie. I studied him closely, trying to catch a glimpse of the man I once knew, but all I found was a shadow of him, and a growing sense that something in our lives had shifted. I didn't say anything. Not then. Instead, I busied myself with dinner, asked the usual questions, pretended not to notice the way his answers came slower, the way his smile seemed forced. We ate in silence, both of us trapped in a play we no longer believed in, reciting lines we no longer felt. And as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while he turned his back to me, I couldn't help but wonder, when did we stop being us? The next morning, I decided to shake things up. I cooked his favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs the way he liked them, with just the right amount of cheese, and toast slightly burnt because he always said it gave the bread more character. I set the table carefully, even added a small vase with fresh flowers from the garden. It was silly, maybe, but I thought that if I reminded him of the little things, we might stumble back into the warmth we once had. He came downstairs with his usual tired look, his phone already in his hand. I waited for him to notice the effort, the flowers, the meal. He did, eventually, but only in passing. "Looks nice," he muttered, sliding into his chair. He smiled, yes, but it was the kind of smile you give out of habit, not out of joy. We ate in silence again, the sound of forks against plates louder than any conversation. I kept glancing at him, waiting for him to look up, waiting for him to see me. Not just see me, but see me. The way he used to. But his eyes stayed fixed on his phone, or on the plate in front of him, or on some thought I wasn't part of. Later that day, I found myself reminiscing. I went through an old photo album, the kind we used to put together before everything became digital. The first picture was of us on our wedding day, both of us laughing so hard the photographer almost gave up trying to get a serious shot. I remembered the way his eyes looked then, bright, alive, completely locked on me as though I was the only person in the world. Page after page, I saw the proof of what we once were: vacations, late-night ice cream runs, road trips where we got lost but didn't care, nights spent on the rooftop talking about dreams we never really chased but loved to imagine. In those pictures, there was no space between us. His hand always found mine, his arm always around my shoulder, his smile always wide. I closed the album with a sigh. Somewhere between then and now, we had lost that spark. Or maybe he had lost it. Or maybe it was me. The thought haunted me all afternoon. That evening, he was late again. Not unusual, work often kept him, or so he said. But this time, when he walked through the door, I noticed a faint trace of cologne on him. Not the one he usually wore. This was different, softer, sweeter, clinging to him like a secret. Long day? I asked casually, studying his face. Yeah, he replied quickly, avoiding my eyes as he set his briefcase down. Back-to-back meetings. I'm exhausted. I nodded, pretending to believe him, but the truth was, a tiny voice inside me had already begun to whisper. A voice I didn't want to hear. A voice that asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to face him. He was scrolling through his phone again, the blue light reflecting in his tired eyes. I wanted to reach out, to take the phone from his hands, to ask him to just look at me. But I stayed still, silent, trapped between fear of what I might find and hope that I was simply imagining things. He looked up briefly, catching my gaze. For a moment, I thought I saw something there, guilt, maybe, or distance, or just the weight of whatever he was carrying. But just as quickly, he smiled that practiced smile and kissed my forehead. "Good night," he said softly. And then he turned away. I lay awake for hours, the darkness pressing in, the silence deafening. That night, I realized something important. Sometimes, it's not the words that reveal the truth. Sometimes, it's the absence of them. The weekend came, and with it, the quiet routine that had once felt comforting but now only seemed to highlight the distance between us. He sat in the living room, flipping through channels on the television, while I moved around the house aimlessly, folding laundry, rearranging books, doing little chores that didn't really need doing. I paused in the hallway for a moment, watching him. He looked tired, his posture slouched, his eyes glazed over. I remembered how different weekends used to be. We'd wake up late, make pancakes together, spill flour on the counter, laugh like kids. Sometimes, we'd take spontaneous drives with no destination, just us and the open road. He'd reach over to squeeze my hand on the steering wheel, and I'd feel the familiar rush in my chest, the certainty that we were building something beautiful together. But now, the silence between us filled the room like a third presence. I wanted to speak, to suggest we go out, maybe see a movie, maybe just walk in the park. But I didn't. Instead, I carried the folded laundry upstairs, wondering when my voice had started to feel so unnecessary. Later that evening, as he stepped into the shower, I went to pick up his phone from the nightstand. It wasn't something I usually did. I respected his privacy, or at least I told myself I did. But tonight, my fingers lingered a little longer on the screen. It lit up suddenly, a soft vibration breaking the silence. A message. It was brief, almost meaningless on its own. "Hope you got home safe. Sweet dreams." My stomach tightened. The name was unfamiliar, just a first name I didn't recognize, no last name, no picture. For a moment, I convinced myself it was nothing. A coworker, maybe, a friend, but the phrasing, it was tender, personal. Not the way colleagues usually spoke. Before I could stop myself, I swiped at the screen, heart pounding. The thread was short, only a few messages, but enough to leave me shaken. Simple words: "It was nice seeing you. Next time, coffee's on me. Good night," smiley face. I dropped the phone as though it had burned me. My hands trembled. My throat went dry. When he stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist, he smiled at me casually, as though nothing in the world had changed. I forced a smile back, my heart thundering in my chest. "Everything okay?" he asked, running a hand through his damp hair. "Yeah," I said quickly, too quickly. "Just tired." He nodded, not pressing further, and went about his routine. I watched him, studying every movement, every expression, wondering how many secrets could be hidden in something so ordinary. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying those words on the screen. Sweet dreams, sweet dreams, sweet dreams, over and over, until the phrase felt poisonous. The next day, I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was overreacting. That people could send kind messages without them meaning anything. That maybe this person was just a friend, maybe even someone who didn't know he was married. I clung to those maybes like lifelines, desperate to quiet the storm inside me. But deep down, I knew better. I remembered the way he used to text me, back when we were just falling in love. The way he'd send me little notes in the middle of the day, reminders that I was on his mind, that I mattered. The way those words had made me feel like I was the center of his world. That was how it felt again, only this time, those words weren't for me. That realization sank into me like a stone dropped into deep water. And for the first time, I felt truly afraid. Not just of losing him, but of realizing that, maybe, I already had. The following days passed in a blur. I went through the motions of life, cooking, cleaning, working, yet my mind was elsewhere, circling back again and again to that message on his phone. Hope you got home safe. Sweet dreams. Simple words, but they lodged themselves in me like a thorn I couldn't pull out. I told myself not to think about it, but every time he smiled at his phone, every time he turned it face down when I walked into the room, my heart gave a painful twist. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to scream, who is she? Why is she telling you sweet dreams? But the fear of his answer held me back. Because what if he told me the truth? What if the truth shattered everything I had been clinging to? One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found an old scarf tucked away in the back of the closet. It was mine, from years ago, the one I used to wear on our late-night walks. I lifted it to my face, inhaling the faint scent of lavender that still clung to the fabric, and suddenly, memories came rushing back. We had been younger then, so full of life and so sure of each other. I remembered a particular night, early in our marriage. The power had gone out during a storm, and instead of complaining, he lit candles all over the living room. We sat on the floor, wrapped in blankets, talking about nothing and everything. He played me songs on his guitar, his voice soft but strong, his eyes never leaving mine. At one point, he pulled me close and whispered, "I don't ever want to lose this. I don't ever want to lose you." The memory hit me like a wave, so vivid that I could almost feel the warmth of that night again. And yet, as I stood in our bedroom years later, holding that scarf, I realized how far we had drifted from that promise. That evening, he came home later than usual. He looked tired, distracted, his tie loosened, his hair slightly out of place. I studied him as he poured himself a glass of water, his movements automatic, as though he was somewhere else entirely. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Yeah," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "Meetings ran over." I nodded, though I didn't believe him. Something in his tone felt rehearsed, like a line he had practiced. We sat down to dinner, and the silence between us grew heavy again. I pushed food around my plate, my appetite gone. He ate quickly, barely tasting his food, then excused himself to make a phone call. I watched him step into the hallway, his voice low, careful, almost secretive. I couldn't make out the words, but I saw the way his face softened, the way his lips curved into a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. When he returned, he caught me looking at him. For the briefest second, our eyes locked, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. His expression changed, subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough for me to notice. It wasn't anger. It wasn't guilt. It was something else entirely. It was distance. It was the look of someone who saw me differently than before. Not as his partner, not as the woman he once adored, but as a shadow of a life he no longer felt tethered to. I forced myself to smile, pretending I hadn't noticed. But deep inside, I knew. That look, fleeting though it was the beginning of the end. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my heart heavy with a truth I wasn't ready to face. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't come with grand confessions or dramatic scenes. Sometimes, it begins quietly, in the smallest of moments. A message, a secret smile, a different look. And that was the night I realized, He looked at me differently.